Johnny Depp arrives at the hospital to support the children, but one girl with cancer asks him something that makes him unable to hold back tears. Don't forget to subscribe and write in the comments where you're watching us from. The hospital, nestled in the heart of a sprawling city, stood as a towering, stoic structure of hope and despair. The children's oncology wing was quiet, save for the occasional hum of medical equipment and the muffled conversations of nurses and parents. The air carried a distinct sterility, a mixture of antiseptics and clinical precision that permeated every corner. The walls were painted in soft pastels, muted yellows and blues, meant to be soothing, but often feeling like a poor imitation of warmth. Amelia's room was on the third floor, overlooking a small courtyard. The view was mostly unremarkable. A patch of dull winter grass, a few bare trees, and sometimes, if she was lucky, a bird hopping among the branches. Inside the room, an artificial flower arrangement sat on the windowsill, its bright plastic petals a small attempt to inject cheer into an otherwise somber environment. A nightlight, shaped like a cartoon star, glowed faintly near her bed, its soft illumination keeping the darkness at bay. Amelia was 8 years old, with deep brown eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies of dreams. Her skin, smooth and dark as polished mahogany, had lost some of its usual glow, but her smile, when it appeared, was still as radiant as sunlight. She had been in the hospital for months, in and out of treatment. The cycles of chemotherapy had stolen her energy and her hair, but not her spirit. Or at least, that was what she wanted everyone to believe. Amelia loved to draw. Her bed was surrounded by stacks of paper and colored pencils, though the latter had dwindled over time as she sharpened them to tiny nubs. Drawing was her escape. She had created entire worlds on paper, vast oceans, endless skies, and pirate ships sailing toward distant horizons. On those ships, she always drew herself as the captain, strong and fearless, leading her crew into adventures beyond the reach of her hospital room. The room was small, but shared with 2 other children. To her left was Trey, a boy a little older than her, with a quick wit and a crooked smile. He had just finished a round of chemotherapy, and though he tried to act brave, the weariness in his eyes betrayed him. To her right was Lauren, a quiet girl of 12 who spent most of her time painting landscapes. Lauren rarely spoke, but when she did, her words were thoughtful and kind. The 3 of them had formed a quiet camaraderie, their shared experiences binding them together in ways only they could understand. Amelia's parents visited every day. Her mother, a tall woman with a gentle voice, often brought books to read aloud. Her father, though quieter, had a way of making Amelia laugh with his silly impressions and exaggerated stories. They tried to hide their worry, but Amelia could see it in their eyes, in the way her mother's hand lingered on her forehead a little too long, or the way her father's jokes sometimes faltered mid-sentence. The nurses, especially Miss Jen, were like a second family. Miss Jen had a warm smile and a voice that could calm even the most restless of children. She always found time to check in on Amelia, often bringing small treats or new drawing supplies. It was Miss Jen who first noticed the way Amelia's drawings shifted over time. At first, they had been colorful and detailed, full of life. Lately, they had become simpler, quieter, just ships and oceans, the horizons growing fainter with each passing day. Amelia was known among the staff and other patients for her resilience. She rarely complained, even when the treatments left her weak and nauseous. She was the one who comforted the other children when they were scared, offering words of encouragement or simply holding their hands. Yet, in the stillness of the night, When the lights dimmed and the world outside her window turned silent, Amelia allowed herself to feel the weight of her reality. She would clutch her pillow tightly, her small body trembling as she let the tears flow. It wasn't the pain or the treatments that frightened her the most. It was the uncertainty, the not knowing. One evening, as the winter sky outside turned a deep shade of indigo, Amelia sat at her small desk, sketching another ship. This one was her favorite yet, with tall, billowing sails and a proud flag bearing a skull and crossbones. She imagined herself standing on the deck, the wind in her face, her voice strong as she gave commands to her loyal crew. For a moment, she could almost hear the crash of the waves and feel the salt spray on her skin. "Amelia," Miss Jen said softly, peeking into the room, "how's my favorite artist today?" Amelia turned and smiled faintly. "I'm okay, just drawing." Miss Jen stepped closer, glancing at the picture. "Another pirate ship? That's amazing. You've got quite the fleet now." Amelia nodded. "One day, I'll sail them all. I'll see the whole world." Miss Jen's smile faltered for a split second before she recovered. "I have no doubt about that, Captain Amelia. No doubt at all." As the night wore on, Amelia finished her drawing and carefully placed it in her box. She climbed back into bed, her body aching with exhaustion. She stared at the ceiling, imagining stars above her, twinkling against a vast, endless sky. Though her body was confined to this small room, her dreams sailed far beyond its walls. In her heart, she was already out there, charting a course to places unknown, a brave captain leading her ship into the great unknown. And for tonight, that was enough. The next morning began like most others in the children's oncology ward. The hum of machines blended with the soft murmur of nurses as they moved between rooms, checking on patients. Amelia was still in bed, gazing out the window at the bare trees in the courtyard. The pale winter sun peeked through the clouds, casting faint streaks of light across her room. She had barely touched her breakfast tray, pushing the food around absent-mindedly. The monotony of the day was interrupted by the sound of Miss Jen's cheerful voice echoing through the hallway. She entered the room with a wide smile, carrying a clipboard and a sense of excitement that was hard to ignore. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice bright. "I've got some very special news." Amelia, Trey, and Lauren looked up, curiosity sparking in their tired eyes. Miss Jen pulled a chair closer to the foot of Amelia's bed, her excitement palpable. "In just a few days, we're going to have a very special visitor, someone who's coming here just to see all of you." Trey sat up straighter, his usual mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Is it someone famous?" Miss Jen nodded. "Very famous. I'm talking about Captain Jack Sparrow himself." Amelia blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Johnny Depp?" she asked softly, her voice filled with a mix of disbelief and wonder. "That's right," Miss Jen confirmed. "He's coming to visit the ward. He'll be in costume just like in the movies, and he's going to spend time with each of you." The room buzzed with excitement. Trey immediately began listing questions he wanted to ask the actor, while Lauren, for the first time in days, smiled and said she might paint something for him. Even Amelia, who usually kept her emotions in check, felt a flicker of hope and joy she hadn't felt in weeks. As the day went on, the news spread through the ward like wildfire. The staff began preparing for the visit, decorating the common areas with pirate-themed banners and balloons. Children who could leave their rooms gathered in small groups, whispering about what they would say or do when they met the famous actor. The nurses encouraged everyone to create something special for him, whether it was a drawing, a letter, or even just a question. That evening, Amelia sat at her desk, her mind racing with ideas. She wanted to do something meaningful, something that would capture how much this visit meant to her. She reached for her box of drawings and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. Taking a deep breath, she began sketching. She decided to draw a pirate ship, but this time it would be different. The ship would be sailing toward a golden horizon, its sails full and proud, cutting through waves that sparkled under the setting sun. Above the ship, she added a banner with the words, "Dreams can be infinite." It was a phrase her father had said to her once, and it had stayed with her ever since. As she worked, her mind wandered to thoughts of Johnny Depp. She had seen every Pirates of the Caribbean movie multiple times. She loved the way Captain Jack Sparrow could face danger with a smile, his humor and confidence never wavering. To her, he wasn't just a character. He was a symbol of courage and freedom, two things she longed for in her own life. By the time she finished the drawing, it was nearly midnight. Amelia sat back and looked at her work, a small smile of satisfaction tugging at her lips. She carefully signed her name in the corner and placed the drawing in her folder, ready to present it to the actor when he arrived. The following days were filled with a kind of anticipation that hadn't been felt in the ward for a long time. Even the staff seemed lighter, their steps quicker, their smiles wider. For the children, the visit wasn't just about meeting a celebrity. It was a chance to escape, if only for a little while, from the weight of their illnesses. Amelia spent most of her time thinking about what she wanted to say to Johnny Depp. She had one question, a question that had been on her mind for weeks. She wasn't sure if she'd have the courage to ask it, but the thought of doing so filled her with a strange mix of fear and hope. On the eve of the visit, Miss Jen stopped by Amelia's room to check in on her. "How's my favorite artist doing?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I'm okay," Amelia replied, clutching her drawing close to her chest. "I finished my picture. Do you think he'll like it?" Miss Jen smiled warmly. "Amelia, he's going to love it, and I think he's going to love meeting you even more." Amelia nodded, her thoughts drifting to the question she hoped to ask. "Miss Jen," she said hesitantly, "do you think it's okay to ask him something serious?" Miss Jen tilted her head, her expression softening. "I think you can ask him anything you want, sweetheart. He's coming here because he cares about all of you, and I'm sure he'll listen to whatever you have to say." Amelia nodded again, her grip tightening on the drawing. She didn't say it out loud, but she knew what she wanted to ask. Do even pirates get scared of dying? As the night deepened, the ward grew quiet again, the buzz of excitement settling into a calm anticipation. Amelia lay in bed, her drawing safely tucked under her pillow, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of something she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was hope. Or maybe it was the promise of an adventure waiting just around the corner. Tomorrow she would meet Captain Jack Sparrow. And maybe, just maybe, she would find the courage to ask the question that had been weighing on her heart. The day of Johnny Depp's visit arrived with an energy unlike anything the children's ward had experienced in months. The nurses moved briskly through the halls, finalizing decorations and making sure every child was comfortable. Pirate banners hung from the ceilings, and tables in the common room were covered with small treasures. Plastic coins, eye patches, and even tiny ships made from folded paper. Amelia woke to the sound of laughter drifting from the corridor. She rubbed her eyes and sat up, her drawing still carefully tucked under her pillow. The sky outside was overcast, but it didn't matter. Today wasn't about the weather. Today was about the promise of something extraordinary. Miss Jen entered the room, her face lit up with excitement. "Good morning, Captain Amelia," she said with a wink. "Are you ready for the big day?" Amelia smiled faintly, her heart fluttering with nervous anticipation. "Do you think he'll really come to my room?" Miss Jen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Oh, he'll definitely come. He's making sure to see every single one of you." The morning passed in a blur. Nurses helped the children who were able to move gather in the common room, while others, like Amelia, stayed in their beds, waiting. Trey, who had insisted on wearing a makeshift pirate hat, had been wheeled down the hall, grinning from ear to ear. Lauren chose to stay in her room, quietly finishing a watercolor painting of the ocean. Amelia stayed near her window, holding her drawing tightly. She kept glancing at the clock, each minute feeling longer than the last. Her mind raced with thoughts about what she would say. Would she have the courage to ask her question? Would he even notice her drawing? Just after noon, the sound of laughter and cheers erupted from the hallway. Amelia's heart leapt as she heard the unmistakable voice of Captain Jack Sparrow himself. "Well, well, well, what have we here?" the voice drawled, thick with the character's infamous charm. "A fine crew of misfits and scallywags, eh?" Amelia craned her neck, straining to hear more. The sound grew louder as Johnny made his way closer. She could hear his exaggerated pirate accent, the way he made each child laugh with his antics. He wasn't just visiting, he was performing, bringing Jack Sparrow to life in a way that made the hospital walls seem to disappear. Finally, the door to her room creaked open. In stepped Johnny Depp, fully transformed into Captain Jack Sparrow. His iconic hat sat slightly askew, his beaded hair swinging as he tilted his head to take in the room. His dark eyes scanned the space before landing on Amelia. "Ahoy there," he said, his voice warm and playful. "And who might you be, young lady?" Amelia felt her cheeks flush. She clutched her drawing tighter, struggling to find her voice. I'm Amelia," she finally managed. Johnny took a few exaggerated steps closer, his boots clicking against the linoleum floor. "Amelia, eh? A fine name for a pirate. And what's this?" He gestured to the paper in her hands. "Have you got a treasure map for me?" Amelia shook her head, a small smile breaking through her nervousness. It's a drawing I made. For you." His eyes softened as he crouched down beside her bed, his movement still infused with the character's signature flair. "A drawing? Well, let's have a look then." With trembling hands, Amelia passed the paper to him. Johnny unfolded it carefully, his expression shifting as he took in the details. The ship, the golden horizon, the waves, it all seemed to come alive under his gaze. His fingers traced the words written above the ship, "Dreams can be infinite." For a moment, he said nothing. The room seemed to hold its breath. Then he looked back at Amelia, his face no longer playful but earnest. This is beautiful," he said softly. "You've got a gift, Amelia, truly." Amelia felt her heart swell. She hadn't expected him to react this way, to seem so genuinely moved. "Thank you," she whispered. Johnny set the drawing down, gently on the bedside table. "Now tell me, Captain Amelia," he said, his voice lighter again. "What's the story behind this fine vessel of yours?" Amelia hesitated, then took a deep breath. It's my ship. I'm the captain. And it's sailing to a place where anything is possible." Johnny tilted his head, studying her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "A place where anything is possible, you say? Sounds like a fine destination, and I reckon you're just the captain to get us there." The conversation continued, flowing naturally as Johnny asked her about her drawings, her favorite movies, and her dreams. For a little while, Amelia forgot about her fears. She forgot about the hospital, the treatments, and the uncertainty of her future. In that moment, she was just a girl talking to her hero. But as their time together drew to a close, Amelia felt the weight of her question pressing down on her. She knew this was her chance, her only chance to ask. "Captain Jack?" she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Johnny leaned in closer, his expression soft and attentive. "Aye, Captain." Her hands gripped the edges of her blanket as she gathered her courage. Do you think even pirates get scared of dying?" The question hung in the air, raw and unguarded. Johnny's playful demeanor faded as he realized the depth of what she was asking. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. He glanced at the drawing on the table, then back at Amelia, his face somber but kind. "Even the bravest pirates," he said finally, his voice low and steady, "get scared sometimes. But you know what makes them brave? It's not that they don't feel fear. It's that they keep going, no matter what. They keep chasing the horizon." Amelia nodded, her eyes glistening. I think I understand." Johnny smiled gently. "You're braver than any pirate I've ever known, Amelia, and I reckon you've got the strongest ship on these seas." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a braided leather bracelet adorned with small beads and charms. "Here," he said, slipping it onto her wrist, "a token of your captaincy. You're part of my crew now." Amelia stared at the bracelet, her heart pounding. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Johnny stood, adjusting his hat with a flourish. "Take care of that ship, Captain Amelia. It's got places to go, and so do you." As he left the room, Amelia lay back against her pillows, clutching the bracelet. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. For the first time in a long time, the horizon didn't feel so far away. The laughter and energy Johnny Depp had brought to the children's ward lingered long after he left. Nurses and staff exchanged smiles as they tidied up the remnants of his visit. Discarded pirate hats, crumpled paper ships, and a room filled with echoes of joy. For the children, it was as if a beam of sunlight had pierced through the heavy clouds that usually hung over their days. Amelia sat in her bed, her fingers tracing the braided leather bracelet on her wrist. The small charms clinked together softly with each movement, and she couldn't help but smile. She had been nervous, terrified even, to ask her question, but she was glad she had. The way Johnny had answered, his voice steady yet kind, had given her something she hadn't realized she needed: validation. It was okay to be scared. Even the bravest people felt fear. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Trey returned to their room, still buzzing with excitement. He recounted every word Johnny had said to him, adding his own embellishments for dramatic effect. Lauren stayed quieter, her eyes distant as she gazed at the watercolor painting she'd given Johnny. Though she didn't say much, there was a small smile on her lips, as if she were holding on to a private memory of their interaction. Amelia listened to Trey's stories, smiling at his enthusiasm, but her mind kept drifting back to her own encounter. She thought about the way Johnny had looked at her drawing, the genuine warmth in his eyes as he spoke to her. It wasn't just the words he said. It was the way he made her feel seen, as if her dreams and fears mattered. That night, as the ward grew quiet and the soft hum of medical equipment filled the air, Amelia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her bracelet glinted faintly in the moonlight streaming through the window. She thought about the question she had asked Johnny and the answer he had given her. Even the bravest pirates get scared sometimes. But they keep going, no matter what. Amelia replayed those words in her mind, letting them sink in. She had always thought bravery meant not feeling afraid, but maybe it was something else entirely. Maybe it was about moving forward, even when the fear felt overwhelming. Maybe it was about holding on to the things that mattered, even when everything else seemed uncertain. She turned her head toward her box of drawings, which sat on the small table beside her bed. The pirate ships she had sketched over the months suddenly took on a new meaning. They weren't just pictures. They were a reflection of her deepest hopes. Each ship she had drawn was a part of her journey, a way of reminding herself that there was still a horizon to chase, even if she couldn't see it yet. The next morning, Miss Jen came into the room with her usual bright smile. "Good morning, my little captains," she said, glancing at Trey, Lauren, and Amelia. "How's everyone feeling after yesterday?" "Still awesome," Trey said, grinning. "Captain Jack said I could be his first mate." Lauren chuckled softly, shaking her head. "You'd probably run the ship into a rock." Amelia smiled at their banter but stayed quiet. Miss Jen noticed and walked over to her bed. "How about you, Amelia? Did you enjoy meeting Captain Sparrow?" Amelia nodded, her fingers brushing against the bracelet. "Yeah, it was really special." Miss Jen sat down beside her. "I saw the drawing you gave him. It was beautiful. I think it really touched him." Amelia hesitated, then looked up at her. "Do you think he meant what he said? About being brave?" Miss Jen tilted her head, her expression softening. "I do. And I think he saw something in you, Amelia. You're one of the bravest kids I've ever met." Amelia didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked down at her hands, her mind turning over Miss Jen's words. Was she really brave? She didn't feel brave most of the time. She felt scared of the treatments, of the uncertainty, of what might happen next. But maybe that was the point. Maybe bravery wasn't about not being scared. Maybe it was about facing those fears anyway. Later that day, Amelia decided to start a new drawing. She pulled out a blank sheet of paper and her box of pencils, which had been replenished recently by one of the nurses. This time, she drew a ship unlike any she had drawn before. It was larger, with towering sails and intricate details carved into the hull. She added a crew to the deck, small figures, each one holding something unique. A compass, a telescope, a map. At the center of the ship, she drew herself, standing tall and proud. Her face was set with determination, her hands gripping the wheel as the ship sailed into a golden horizon. Above the ship, she wrote the same words she had given to Johnny. "Dreams can be infinite." But this time, she added a second line. "And so can courage." When the drawing was finished, she sat back and studied it. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. The ship wasn't just a dream, it was a promise to herself. No matter what happened, she would keep going. She would keep chasing the horizon. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, the bracelet on her wrist felt warm against her skin. In her dreams, she stood at the helm of her ship, the wind in her hair and the open sea stretching out before her. She didn't know where the journey would take her, but she knew she wasn't afraid to find out. The days following Johnny Depp's visit brought a warmth to the children's ward that lingered like the soft glow of a sunset. The nurses noticed how the children seemed lighter, their laughter coming easier, their spirits lifted. Even the parents, who usually carried the weight of their children's battles on their shoulders, looked less burdened, their smiles more genuine. The visit had been more than just a distraction. It had been a reminder that joy and hope could still exist within the walls of the hospital. Amelia spent most of her time quietly working on new drawings. Her latest ship, the one she had drawn after meeting Johnny, felt different from her others. It wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of everything she wanted to hold on to: her dreams, her courage, and the belief that even in the face of uncertainty, she could keep moving forward. One afternoon, as Amelia was finishing the final touches on her drawing, Miss Jen came into the room with an envelope in her hand. Her face was glowing with excitement. "Amelia, I have something for you," she said, holding out the envelope. Amelia looked up, curious. She set down her pencil and took the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, the edges slightly smudged, as if it had been folded and unfolded many times. At the top of the page, in bold, looping letters, were the words from Captain Jack Sparrow. She gasped softly, her eyes scanning the page. The letter was written in character, filled with the same humor and charm Johnny had displayed during his visit. "To the esteemed Captain Amelia, master of the grand ship Dreams Can Be Infinite, it is with great honor that I address you, Captain. Your ship is a marvel, truly a vessel worthy of the high seas. I suspect it can outrun any Navy pursuit, and should you ever find yourself in need of a crew, you'll find me more than willing to lend my services, provided there's rum, of course. Your bravery and wisdom are unmatched. Few pirates, young or old, possess the courage you've shown. I've sailed the world over, from the Caribbean to the farthest edges of the map, and I can say with certainty that you, Captain Amelia, are one of the finest leaders I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Keep chasing the horizon and never forget, the greatest treasure is the one we carry within our hearts. Yours, in piracy and adventure, Captain Jack Sparrow, also known as Johnny Depp, but let's keep that between us. P.S. Look out for the enclosed gift. A captain always needs a compass to guide her. .. Amelia looked up at Miss Jen, her eyes wide. "He wrote this for me?" Miss Jen nodded, her smile soft. "He did. And there's more." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. When she opened it, Amelia gasped again. Inside was a delicate compass, its brass surface gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The needle spun lazily before settling, pointing straight ahead. Amelia gently picked up the compass, her fingers brushing against its cool metal. It wasn't just a gift, it was a promise. A reminder that no matter where she was, she could always find her way. "That's not just any compass," Miss Jen said with a wink. "That's a pirate's compass. It points to the thing your heart desires most." Amelia clutched the compass tightly, tears welling in her eyes. She didn't need to say anything. Miss Jen leaned down and gave her a soft hug, her arms warm and comforting. That night, Amelia placed the compass beside her bed, where the bracelet and her newest drawing also lay. She traced the words she had written on the drawing: "Dreams can be infinite." And so can courage. And thought about everything that had happened. Meeting Johnny, asking her question, hearing his answer, and now this, his letter and gift, felt like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was putting together. She thought about what the compass might point to if it were truly magical. Was it the horizon? A future where she was healthy and free? Or maybe it pointed to something less tangible but just as real, the courage to face whatever lay ahead. The following morning, Amelia woke up early, the soft light of dawn spilling into her room. She held the compass in her hands, watching the needle spin again, before pointing in a direction she couldn't see, but somehow felt deep inside. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. When Miss Jen came in to check on her later, she found Amelia sitting by the window, the compass in her lap, and a small smile on her face. "Good morning, Captain," Miss Jen said. "How's the horizon looking today?" Amelia turned to her, her smile growing. "Bright," she said softly, "really bright." Miss Jen ruffled her hair gently before heading off to her next patient. Amelia looked back out the window, her mind wandering to the letter and the words Johnny had written. She whispered them under her breath, letting them settle in her heart. Keep chasing the horizon. And she knew she would. No matter where her journey led, she would keep sailing. Because the horizon was infinite, and so was she. Weeks passed, and life in the children's oncology ward returned to its steady rhythm, but the visit from Johnny Depp left an indelible mark on everyone. The pirate decorations were long gone, replaced by the usual sterile walls, yet the memory of that day lingered like the warm glow of a setting sun. For the children, it was more than just a fleeting moment of joy. It was a reminder of what it meant to dream, to laugh, and to believe in something greater than the confines of their hospital beds. Amelia kept the compass by her bedside, its brass surface gleaming under the soft light of her night lamp. Each morning, she would pick it up and watch the needle spin before settling on a direction. Though she knew it wasn't truly magical, she liked to imagine it was guiding her somewhere, toward her dreams, her courage, or perhaps even to a horizon she had yet to see. The letter from Johnny, carefully folded and tucked into a small frame, rested on the table beside her bed. She read it often, tracing the bold strokes of his handwriting, the playful humor and heartfelt sincerity woven into each word. It became a source of comfort, a talisman of hope on days when the treatments were especially hard, or when the weight of her illness felt too heavy to bear. One afternoon, Miss Jen stopped by Amelia's room with a wide smile on her face. "Guess what, Captain Amelia?" she said, holding a tablet in her hands. "What?" Amelia asked, curious. "Johnny Depp mentioned you in an interview," Miss Jen replied, pulling up the video. She placed the tablet on Amelia's lap and pressed play. On the screen, Johnny sat in a cozy studio, dressed in his usual eclectic style. The interviewer leaned forward, her voice warm and engaging. "We heard you recently visited a children's hospital," she said. "Can you tell us about that experience?" Johnny nodded, his face softening. "It was humbling, to say the least. Kids are extraordinary, you know. Their strength, their courage, it's something else entirely." He paused, his gaze distant for a moment before continuing. "There was one girl I met, Amelia. She's 8 years old, and she gave me this incredible drawing of a pirate ship sailing toward a golden horizon. She wrote these words on it: 'Dreams can be infinite.' And you know what? She's absolutely right. She reminded me that no matter how hard things get, there's always a horizon to chase, always something to dream about." Amelia's eyes widened as she watched. Hearing her name, her story, and her drawing mentioned by Johnny made her chest feel warm, like the sun had broken through a cloudy sky just for her. Miss Jen placed a hand on her shoulder. "You see, Amelia, you made an impression on him. You reminded him, and all of us, that dreams really can be infinite." Amelia smiled, her fingers brushing the edge of the compass. "I didn't think I could do something like that," she said softly. "You've always had it in you," Miss Jen replied. "Sometimes we just need a little reminder of how much we can inspire others." That evening, Amelia sat by the window, her newest drawing spread out before her. This time she sketched herself standing on the deck of her ship, her compass in one hand and her other arm raised high, pointing toward a golden horizon. Around her stood her crew, Trey, Lauren, Miss Jen, and even Johnny, all smiling and ready for adventure. She added the words, "Keep chasing the horizon" above the scene, letting the phrase anchor her resolve. Outside, the sky shifted from pale blue to deep indigo as the day slipped into night. The stars began to appear, faint at first but growing brighter as the minutes passed. Amelia looked up at them, her heart steady and full. She thought about the horizon, not the physical one she could see from her window, but the one she carried within her. It was endless, filled with possibilities, and no matter where her journey led, she knew she would keep chasing it. Far from the hospital, Johnny Depp sat in his own home, the drawing Amelia had given him framed and displayed on his wall. He often glanced at it when he needed a reminder of the strength and resilience people could carry, even in the face of life's toughest challenges. For him, Amelia wasn't just a brave girl he had met. She was a symbol of hope, of the unyielding human spirit. In her hospital bed, Amelia drifted off to sleep with the compass clutched in her hand. Her dreams carried her to the deck of her ship, the wind in her hair and the open sea stretching out before her. The horizon called to her, vast and glowing, a reminder that her journey was far from over. She was a captain, a dreamer, and above all, a believer in the infinite possibilities of tomorrow. Thank you for watching to the end. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. Share this video with your friends and family if you liked it. And be sure to check out the other videos on the channel. There are even more interesting things waiting for you. See you in the next video.